Picture this: rolling California hills, thousands of acres of open land, cattle grazing in the golden afternoon light, and a silence so deep you can hear the wind move through the grass. No cameras, no crowds, no Hollywood. Just land, legacy, and one of the most quietly powerful real estate empires ever assembled by a man who spent his career telling the world he didn't need anyone's permission to do anything. That man is Clint Eastwood, and today, we're pulling back the curtain on the ranch empire most of his fans don't even know exists. 7 properties, hundreds of millions in real estate value, and a land philosophy so sharp it would make most investors take notes. Stay with me until number 1, because the full picture will genuinely surprise you. Let's start at number 7. At number 7, we begin where most people's understanding of Clint Eastwood ends, on screen, and where the real story actually starts. Long before the ranch empire took shape, Eastwood was making calculated moves in California real estate during the 1970s and 1980s, when Monterey County land was still undervalued and largely overlooked by the Hollywood crowd chasing Malibu and Beverly Hills. While other actors were pouring their earnings into depreciating luxuries, Eastwood was quietly acquiring acreage in one of California's most naturally beautiful and historically significant corridors. He understood something that most people learn too late. Land doesn't go out of style. It doesn't lose relevance. It doesn't get canceled. And in a region like Carmel Valley, it only moves in one direction over time. That foundational mindset set the stage for everything that came after it. And it's why the empire we're about to walk through didn't happen by accident. It was built with intention, one deliberate acquisition at a time. But the philosophy alone doesn't tell the whole story. Number 6 gets into the first major asset. At number 6, we arrive at what many consider the geographic and emotional heart of Eastwood's landholdings, the Tehama community in Carmel Valley. Now, Tehama isn't just a ranch in the traditional sense. It's a private, gated residential community and golf club spread across roughly 2,000 acres of rolling Carmel Valley terrain. And Eastwood is the man who developed it. He didn't just buy land here, he shaped it. The Tehama Golf Club, designed by Eastwood himself in collaboration with golf course architect Jay Morish, opened in the late 1990s and immediately became one of the most exclusive private courses on the West Coast. Membership is invitation only. The waiting list at various points has stretched for years. Golf Digest has consistently ranked it among California's finest private courses, and the property itself has been appraised at figures ranging from $25 million to upward of $30 million depending on market conditions. This isn't a vanity project. This is a legacy asset that appreciates while you sleep. And tucked inside that Tehama footprint is something most fans completely miss. That's number 5. At number 5, here's what the celebrity profiles leave out. Within the broader Tehama landholdings, Eastwood has maintained working cattle operations that function completely apart from the golf and residential side of the development. This is working ranch land, real cattle, real agricultural activity. And in California, that distinction matters enormously because agricultural land classifications carry significant property tax advantages under the Williamson Act, a California law that allows landowners to have their acreage taxed at agricultural use value rather than full market value. For a property in Carmel Valley worth tens of millions on the open market, that difference in annual tax liability can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Smart farmers have used this strategy for generations. Eastwood, whether by instinct or design, has been doing it at a scale most ranchers never reach. The cattle aren't just a lifestyle choice. They're part of a financial structure that makes the whole operation more efficient to hold long-term. Now let's leave Carmel Valley for a moment, because number 4 takes us somewhere even more personal. At number 4, we have the Mission Ranch, a property that tells you more about who Clint Eastwood actually is than any interview ever could. Located in Carmel by the Sea, the Mission Ranch is a historic farmstead dating back to the 1850s, built on land connected to the old Carmel Mission. By the late 1980s, the property had fallen into disrepair and a developer had purchased it with plans to tear it down and build condominiums. Eastwood, who had served as mayor of Carmel by the Sea from 1986 to 1988, stepped in and bought the property specifically to prevent its demolition. He paid approximately $22 million for the acquisition and subsequent restoration. And what he built in its place is one of California's most quietly remy, our cable hospitality properties. The Mission Ranch today operates as a working inn with 31 rooms, a full-service restaurant with views of Point Lobos and Carmel Bay, a piano bar that has become something of a local institution, and grounds that still include active sheep grazing on the surrounding meadow. It is, in every sense, a living piece of California history, and Eastwood owns all of it. Here's where number 3 shifts from sentiment to pure business. At number 3, the Mission Ranch isn't a museum. It's a revenue-generating hospitality operation in one of California's most visited coastal communities. Carmel by the Sea draws millions of tourists annually. Room rates at the Mission Ranch run from $275 to over $500 per night depending on the season and room type. The restaurant is consistently booked weeks in advance. The piano bar has developed a loyal following that returns year after year. And because Eastwood undertook a meticulous historic restoration rather than a generic renovation, the property carries a cultural cachet that no amount of marketing budget can manufacture. Travel publications from Condé Nast to Travel Plus Leisure have featured it as one of the most distinctive small inns on the California coast. When you combine occupancy rates, food and beverage revenue, and the underlying land value in one of the most constrained real estate markets in the state, the Mission Ranch functions as exactly what seasoned real estate investors call a trophy asset, something that generates income, appreciates in value, and simultaneously enhances every other asset around it. Now, number 2 is where the philosophy behind all of it comes into focus. At number 2, here's what separates Clint Eastwood's approach to land from the typical celebrity real estate story. He isn't collecting properties as status symbols. He isn't flipping for short-term profit. The through line connecting Tehama, the Mission Ranch, the cattle operations, and every other piece of land in his portfolio is a coherent set of values that have remained consistent across 6 decades. Privacy, self-sufficiency, rootedness. A belief that the land you steward says something fundamental about who you are. These aren't abstract ideals for Eastwood. They show up in concrete decisions. He chose Carmel over Los Angeles when he could have had any address in the world. He developed a residential community designed around open space and natural landscape rather than maximum density. He saved a historic farmstead when the economically rational move was to let a developer have it. A longtime associate once noted that Eastwood has always talked about his Carmel Valley land the way other men talk about their families, with a quiet, undemonstrative seriousness that makes it clear it isn't casual. That consistency of character, expressed through land, is the real foundation of the empire. And in real estate, character expressed consistently over decades compounds the same way money does. Which brings us to number 1, and the full scope of what this empire actually represents. At number 1, when you pull back far enough to seize Clint Eastwood's real estate and ranch holdings as a single integrated picture, the numbers are genuinely striking. Conservative estimates place the combined value of his Carmel Valley and Carmel by the Sea holdings alone at well over $50 million. When you add in additional California properties, his longtime Pebble Beach area residence, and the appreciated value of the Tehama development, a project he initiated and retains significant interest in, credible analyses of his total real estate wealth have ranged from $75 million to over $100 million. For context, the average Hollywood actor's wealth is tied up in liquid assets, investments, and residuals that can evaporate with market shifts or career downturns. Eastwood's wealth is anchored in land, in physical, finite California coastal and valley acreage that has appreciated relentlessly for 50 years and shows no structural reason to reverse. He didn't inherit it. He didn't stumble into it. He built it the way he built everything else, slowly, deliberately, without asking anyone's permission, and with a long enough time horizon that most people never recognized what he was doing until it was already done. That is the ranch empire. That is the legacy. And honestly, The squint makes a lot more sense when you understand what he was protecting all along. So there you have it. 7 layers of one of entertainment's most underappreciated real estate stories. From the private fairways of Tehama to the sheep-grazed meadows of the Mission Ranch, Clint Eastwood built something that will outlast every film in his catalog. Not because he got lucky, and not because he had more money than everyone else, but because he had a philosophy and the discipline to execute it across decades without wavering. If this gave you a new way of looking at how legacy and land intersect, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. And before you go, check out the video on your screen where we break down how other legendary figures turned rural land into generational empires. The patterns are more similar than you'd expect. Smart land ownership isn't about acreage. It's about intention held long enough to become irreversible.